Hi there, this is David, and today I would like to discuss something. More specifically, the term JRPG. So, if you're out of the loop, pretty recently there was an interview with Yoshi P or Yoshida, who is one of the developers for Final Fantasy XVI. And he had an interview with SkillUp, and he had a quote in there that I just want to read aloud to all of y'all. The thing that Yoshida wants to get across is that whenever we are creating games, at least with our team, we don't go into them thinking that we're going to be creating JRPGs. We just go into them thinking that we're going to be creating RPGs. For us as developers in Japan, the first time that we heard it, it was like a discriminatory term, as though we were being made fun of for creating these games. And so for some developers, the term JRPG can be something that maybe will trigger bad feelings because of what it was in the past. It wasn't a compliment to a lot of developers in Japan. We do understand that recently, JRPG does have better connotations and it's being used as a positive, but we still remember a time when it was used as a negative. So this is pretty disheartening to me. JRPGs are my favorite genre. You can see them all behind me. I have a shrine to JRPGs here in my house, and it's kind of surprising to me that he first heard that term 15 years ago, because I remember using that term 25 plus years ago. Back whenever I'd be reading the Nintendo Power, before there was even an internet, I remember knowing about JRPGs and thinking that they were a good thing. Thinking to myself, okay, I know that this game is a JRPG as opposed to the bad RPGs, because at that time, the Western RPGs, Ultima, Wizardry, games like that, they were no good. I remember the first time that I played a Western RPG that I actually had fun with was Diablo on the PS1, which was probably somewhere around 1997-ish when I was about 15 years old. So all before then, it was all JRPGs all the time, and it was just a really good thing. Now, he says that the first time that he heard the term was 15 years ago. So let's look back, let's rewind to 15 years ago. During that console generation, we had the Nintendo Wii, the PS3, and the Xbox 360. And if you recall, this was a very dark time for RPGs. On the Wii, there was Arc-Rise Fantasia, Apuna, Tales of Symphonia 2, and then after begging and pleading well after the life cycle of the Wii was pretty much over, we finally got some decent games for the Wii, mostly in Xenoblade Chronicles, as well as The Last Story and Pandora's Tower. And if you were around during that time with Operation Rainfall and all that, you will remember that. Back whenever the Xbox 360 was first released, there were some good JRPGs on that system. They actually came out on the Xbox before they came out on the PS3. Games like Star Ocean 4 came out first there. So that was pretty decent, and they also got Lost Odyssey, they got Blue Dragon, they got Tales of Vesperia, all on the Xbox 360. So that was one of the reasons why I bought the Xbox 360, because I was like, oh, this is a JRPG machine. The PS3 had to kind of play catch up, and then eventually a couple JRPGs came out for that system, most notably Tales of Graces, Tales of Xillia, a couple more here and there, but for the most part, it wasn't really the best ever for JRPGs, and especially for Square Enix, because what were they producing at this time? If you recall, it was that Final Fantasy XIII trilogy, which wasn't exactly the most popular Final Fantasy games ever received. So for the first time that they heard this term, they weren't really doing the best job that they've ever done, and honestly, this was probably the first time that they were really facing true, stiff competition from Western developers. So for them to hear this term the first time 15 years ago makes sense to me, because it was the first time that they really had to say like, oh, Dragon Age? Oh, Skyrim? Oh, Mass Effect? Oh, wow, yeah, these games might actually, kick our ass. We need to figure this out. And they had some competition. What was the competition back on the SNES, back on the PlayStation 2? There really wasn't all that many great Western RPGs on those systems. So I think that the reason why they first heard this term back during this console generation was because this was the first time that they really had to deal with Western competition in the RPG realm. And they knew that these Western RPGs at the time were doing a whole lot better than the Japanese RPGs at the time, and that is why I think that they have this negative connotation with the term. So that being said, I was actually in a conversation earlier today with Super Derek, and he brought up a really good point. He said, David, we could always change the term. We've changed terminology before. We've done it in the past. We've done it in my lifetime. I'm sure in your lifetime too. Do you remember the term Japanimation? I do. I remember it from the 80s and the 90s. That was animation from Japan, as opposed to just regular cartoons that were on from Western studios. But do we call it Japanimation anymore? No, that term fell out of favor. Now it is called anime. And is it really a big deal to call it Japanimation versus anime, one or the other? No, it really doesn't matter, but nobody uses the term Japanimation anymore because I guess it has some negative connotations. I always looked at Japanimation as kind of a sexualization of girls whenever I first heard it, back whenever I was a teenager. So it does make sense now to call it anime. Another term that I believe has been reclaimed to be positive is the term queer. And I believe that this term has been reclaimed in my lifetime as well. Personally, I hate the term. I cannot stand it. I abhor the word itself, mostly because I've been bullied with that term. I've been discriminated against with that term, with that word. But I have seen that a whole younger generation out there has tried to reclaim that word. People identify as that term, and they've reclaimed it to be positive. So that begs the question, and this is also something that Super Derek brought up, give him a like, give him a sub, is we can change the term JRPG if we want to, but what do we change it to? It's fine to change it, but what term can we use instead? And you can't just say, Japanese role-playing game, because to me, it's more of a descriptive term rather than a term that's just from Japan. For example, there are some JRPGs out there that we all know of as JRPGs that were not developed in Japan, such as Black Sigil, Blade of the Exiled. That was developed in Canada. Secret of Evermore, that's a classic. Guess what? That's American. And then, like the most JRPG ever, Final Fantasy IX, best game ever, guess where that was developed? Hawaii! And they're all JRPGs, because it's more of a descriptive term. It's more of just telling what the gameplay is like. If you were to just classify them all as RPGs, you can't tell me that Hyperdimension Neptunia and Skyrim fall under that same umbrella. To me, they are two entirely different things, and they do need some sort of descriptor just so that we can easily figure out what they are. So that's basically what I want to talk about today. I wanted to just ask, what do you all think about this? Open up a discussion where you can talk about this freely and openly and without fear of reprisal or anything else like that. Maybe you know of a good term that we could use instead of JRPG. Maybe you think that JRPG is fine, and you're perfectly fine with keep on saying it. And honestly, it's been 40 years. I'm probably still going to keep on saying it, at least for the foreseeable future. But if we can come up with a term that can replace it, I could be open to saying something else. I don't know. What do you all think about this? It just seems to be kind of the floodgates are open, and I'm just curious. I would like to know what you feel about what Yoshi P said, what you feel about the term JRPG, and just all of this in general. I'd love to hear what y'all have to say in the comments, and as always, have a good day.